1,000 a year, but less than 1% of the stock added extra year. And they're not replacing the existing stock, they're stabbing to it. World stock of vehicles. 1950 there was about 50 million vehicles, 2000 there was about 500 million, and now there's about 620 million vehicles. The vehicle stock is going up, they're all petrol engines, they're not particularly efficient. A new 70 million is added every year or so, and only about 500,000 of those are hybrids. Okay? We're locked into a very energy-intensive, fuel-inefficient, oil-using infrastructure. One final fact, renewable energy. There's a lot about it. You'd think there was a lot of it going on given the controversy. We've now reached, after about 20 to 30 years of trying, about 3% of the energy in the UK is produced renewably. That's 3% of total energy. Okay, it's moving very slowly. The big changes you need to move very slowly. Third trap, human behaviour. This is a much loved family from the Midwest, United States. This reflects the fact that to deal with something like climate change, you need a lot of behaviour change. People need to start cycling or cooking different, eating different food, lagging the lot. They need to, you need people to be part of the response to climate change. But the trouble is, people aren't that bothered. Most people's family life is about taking the kids to school, it's about watching the footy, going to the pub, doing interesting work, earning money, having holidays and so on. So you're really competing with all the other things that are in people's lives to get these kind of changes that you need. I'll just show one example of how slowly behaviour can change. This is the history of smoking. 35 years ago, the smoking rate was about 45%. Now it's just below 25%. Okay, and this, remember, is a problem. This is a behaviour that, if you carry on doing it, it'll kill you. You personally die. 1 in 2 chance of dying. You personally can stop. You personally can control it. With climate change, you're talking about actions that you take, as long as everyone else takes them, will make a difference in 30 years from now, internationally across the world, in a non-specific way that you're not sure about. So you can see how getting the motivation behind some of this is going to be quite difficult. The next thing, I'm really grateful for Hans Rosling actually for popping up and explaining this next bit. So I think it's really important. But the next bit is about economic expectations. That's a picture of Shanghai to sort of represent massive economic growth. But this is just a continuation of something that's been going on for some time. This, another graph, is the growth of the world economy, where 2010 has been set to 1 on this chart. What you see here is that since 1950, that's over 60 years, the world economy has increased by 10 times in size. And that's all those Swedish people getting washing machines, basically. And everyone else joining, and more of us joining crossing the airline and the washing machine line. That's what's been going on over that period. Thanks to Hans Rosling for explaining that. The interesting thing is, it's really 2 things that drive this. There's growth in population, there's a growth in productivity that each of us can manage. And we get more productive as we have more ideas, more innovation, we network and trade and innovate with other people. We basically can do more stuff each year. I'm going to plot on this line an idealization, which is the green line now, represents what happens if the world individual productivity increases at 2.4% per annum. And it's amazingly close fit to that line, I think you'd agree. So you've got the actual population and everybody producing more at a rate of 2.4% per year. Now that is something quite important in that. So what happens if that continues into the future? That's my next chart. We've squashed the green line down now. Year 2010 is set to 1. The red line is where it goes next. And that's a 7-fold increase in the economy, world economy, over the next 60 years. Now, Hans Rosling was very good on this because he explained where that's coming from. That's women and everybody else, for that matter, in China, in India, in Africa, in Latin America, wanting more stuff, wanting to have the washing machines and the flights and the energy that we use. Why is this important? The importance here is that this long-running trend is not something you can go up against. It's really difficult to go up against that for the reasons he said. There are legitimate expectations that we will go up that route. The second reason it's important is because in a battle between the economy and the environment, the economy tends to win. And I want to just show you some figures that I think are interesting from Mori. Mori have had a tracker of attitudes in society it's been going on since the 70s. And what they do is they ask people what they think the most important issue in Britain is, and other important issues. And this is the line that you get for environment and pollution. So, and you can see a couple of peaks. Any ideas what the peak on the left might be for? Anyone? The ozone hole, actually, that came up in the late 80s. That's the peak concern on climate change. That appeared when the Stern Review came. I don't know if you remember that. And the fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So you got up to around 20% of concern on that. Now, we've had a bad time with the economy recently. We've had bad times with unemployment in the past. So I'm just going to overlay concern about the economy and unemployment on this chart. And there it is. Okay? You see, really, when the economy goes bad, people go onto red alert. It really matters to them a great deal. So I'm going to quote here from Jonathan Porritt, great man, very visionary. He says, living within ecological limits is the non-negotiable basis for our social and economic development. Nature doesn't negotiate, clearly, but the public does, okay? And that's the problem with that statement. Basically, our decision makers are held to account at the ballot box. Even if a totalitarian regime, they want to stay in power, they will not get into conflicts between environment and economy. My fifth time trap, price expectations. This is a chart of the oil price. Really important driver of behaviours in the world economy. When we had the peak in 2008, all kinds of things happened. There was a massive new exploration went on for oil into deep areas, west of Shetland. People innovated, looking for shale gas, looking for tar sands. People started buying smaller cars. General Motors went bust as a result. All kinds of behaviour comes through these prices. If only we had a price signal for carbon, for greenhouse gases, that cause behaviour to change in the same way. If only we had that. Amazingly, the Department for Energy and Climate Change thinks we should. And this is what they say needs to be the price for carbon dioxide, what you would pay to emit a ton of carbon dioxide to meet the targets that we've already set, which is to cut emissions by 80% by 2050, going up to £200 per tonne of carbon dioxide. That's an awful lot. Actually, there is a carbon price in the economy already, and this is it. It comes through the EU emissions trading system. Got no time to explain that. But the problem with this is, what is that telling you about future prices? Not really telling you very much. It's telling you it's a very, very wiggly line. It's very volatile. It's very political. It all depends on what decisions are made about the design of this. Okay, so it's not giving a clear forward price signal. Secondly, it's a misleading chart, because they're plotted on different scales, these two charts. If I plot them on the same scale, then that's what the price signal looks like. Okay, it's a very low, very volatile, very confusing, and not very strong future price signal, and therefore it isn't affecting what society is doing to address carbon dioxide emissions. Now, what to do about it? Those are my 5 counsels of despair. I've just gone through them, 5 time traps. Here's something to stop doing. This is a heresy, by the way. This is a complete heresy to say this. This is the Copenhagen meeting of the Climate Convention. Okay, it's a failure. Everybody expected targets to be agreed. They weren't. Cancun, people hoped they might be, but they weren't. And frankly, I don't think they will be. And the reason they won't be is because when you ask somebody to commit to a level of emissions, you're asking them to take a gamble on those time cuts. You're asking them to bet on changing human behaviour. You're asking them to be able to change infrastructure. You're asking them to possibly take a risk with the economy, which they will not do. And at the same time, you're giving them quite a weak proposition to take to their own publics who tend to favour the economy. So I don't think targets are going to work. So there is another thing that could work, which is instead of specifying the outcome and then letting countries work out the measures, you specify the measure and then you get the outcome that the measures give you. And that's where I think we should go. That's the big idea, in this. I think we should stop trying to agree targets. It's a futile exercise and it's delaying progress in this important area. So what I think we should do is, get the negotiations focus around agreeing an international carbon tax. Okay? And this would be its characteristics. It would be globally coordinated, in other words, the levels would be set internationally, but be collected nationally. So all the money would flow to national governments, so they wouldn't feel they were being taxed by the UN or whatever. It would be predictably rising, slowly, gradually, no shocks, no dislocations. Everything would have time to adjust. You wouldn't be forcing discontinuities into society or economies. Very long term and no shock supply. Okay? Now they could, I believe, negotiate that. It's not easy, but they could negotiate it. So that's the second area where stop doing targets, start doing measures. The third area I think we have to do is recognise that climate change is very real and get out of the denial that we can somehow stop it. We're going to have a lot of climate change in the future. And there's a key time-based challenge there, which is to learn to live with it. And that's internationally, about food security, about the conflict, about desertification. We need to build more resilience into our development efforts. But more closer to home, we also have to recognise that we've got critical infrastructure. We've got water supply, we've got coastal defences, we've got agriculture, and we've got flooding. And a quick example on the way that the priorities play out here. We will spend around, on current plans, around £100 billion on offshore wind farms by 2020, if the current plans come to fruition. That's not we in Wales, that's we UK. We'll spend about £8 billion on flood risk management and flood defences. Is that right? Is the balance right there? I'm not so sure it is. I think we need to think much more about adaptation. The really big thing on adaptation is that we need to start envisioning a kind of cities, the kind of places that we want far into the future, and we need to start working towards them now. If we try and do it piecemeal in an ad hoc way, frankly it won't work. We have to design our cities, our coasts, our landscapes with long-term climate change, profound climate change in mind. And that is a major challenge, time-based challenge for addressing climate change. Now, so my point is, time is fundamental to the challenge of climate change. Time is fundamental to the running of TED, and my time is up. So I'm going to leave it at that.